The first time she whispered, "Please, don't take it off." Her voice didn't sound like refusal. Alone, it sounded like fear, braided tightly with memory, the kind that lives under the skin and wakes up when you least expect it. The ranch house was quiet except for the low creak of old wood and the distant sound of cattle shifting in the fields, and the afternoon sun cut through the slatted walls in thin golden lines that made the dust glow like something holy. He hadn't planned for this moment to feel so heavy. To him, it had begun as something simple, helping her, guiding her, doing what needed to be done before the storm rolled in, but the way her hands trembled changed everything. The rancher had lived his whole life solving problems with steady hands and a steady heart. Broken fences, injured horses, droughts that lasted too long. He faced them all the same way, step by step, without drama. People, though, were different. People carried stories you couldn't see, scars that didn't announce themselves until you were standing far too close to ignore them. She stood there now, eyes wide, breath shallow, as if bracing for something she had already survived once before. He could feel it in the space between them, that invisible line where trust either formed or shattered. He kept going at first, not because he was careless, but because he thought this was the only way forward, the only way to help her stand strong again. Then he saw it, the way her jaw tightened, the way her gaze flickered past him to somewhere else, somewhere darker, and his hand slowed. The rancher had been taught that strength meant persistence, but in that moment he realized strength might mean stopping. His thoughts raced back to the day she arrived at the ranch, carrying a single worn bag and a past she never spoke about. She had said she just needed work, space, and quiet, and he had offered all three without questions. Over time, silence had turned into small conversations, conversations into shared meals, and shared meals into something that felt dangerously close to belonging. Still, there were lines she never crossed, doors she never opened, and today he had stepped too near one of them. The air between them grew thick with unspoken words, and he finally understood that this moment wasn't about what he was doing, but about what she was afraid would happen if he didn't stop. His hands fell away, slow and deliberate, as if setting something fragile back where it belonged. The relief that crossed her face was subtle but unmistakable, like someone who had just realized they were safe again. He stepped back, giving her space, and in that silence something shifted, not broke, but bent, reshaped into something more careful. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the walls, but inside the ranch house there was a stillness that felt earned. He wanted to tell her she didn't owe him bravery, explanations, or trust. He wanted to tell her that nothing would be taken from her here. Not her choices, not her voice, not her sense of control. Instead, he simply said her name softly, grounding her in the present. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and in her eyes he saw not fear, but the beginning of something fragile and powerful, the possibility that stopping had changed everything. And as this chapter of their story closed, one truth became clear. Sometimes, the most dramatic moment isn't when someone keeps going, but when they finally truly stop. If this moment moved you, stay with us, because stories like this unfold slowly, and the next chapter reveals what happens when trust is tested again. What happened after he stopped was quieter than anyone would expect, and yet far more intense, because silence has a way of forcing truth to the surface. She didn't run. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain herself. She simply breathed, deep and shaky at first, then steadier, as if reclaiming something that had almost slipped away. The rancher watched her from a respectful distance, realizing that this pause, this intentional stillness was the most important choice he had made in years. He had grown up believing that love, duty, and responsibility were proven through action, through doing more, pushing harder, never backing down. But standing there, he understood that real care sometimes meant refusing to cross a line, even when curiosity, emotion, or instinct urged you forward. Over the following days, nothing was said directly about that moment, yet everything changed. Their conversations grew deeper, not louder. She began to share small fragments of her past, not details, not scenes, but feelings. The sense of being powerless, the exhaustion of always being expected to endure. He listened without interrupting, without trying to fix her, learning that listening itself could be an act of protection. The ranch, with its wide skies and steady routines, became a place not just of work but of healing. She started to laugh more easily, a sound that surprised them both. And he noticed how she carried herself differently, shoulders no longer braced for impact. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the land in amber and shadow, she finally spoke of that day, not with accusation, but with honesty. She told him that, when she said please, she wasn't asking for permission to be weak. She was asking to be respected. He told her that stopping had scared him too, because it forced him to confront the idea that good intentions could still cause harm if he wasn't paying attention. That conversation, more than any dramatic confession, stitched something strong between them. It wasn't romance born of urgency or passion, but connection built on restraint, empathy, and choice. When the storm eventually came, the real one, not the metaphorical kind, they faced it together, boarding up windows, securing animals, moving with a quiet confidence that came from mutual trust. And in the middle of that chaos, she reached for his hand first, not out of fear but out of certainty. The rancher understood. Then that stopping cold that day hadn't ended something, it had begun it. He hadn't lost her trust by pausing. He had earned it. Their story didn't turn into a fairy tale overnight. Healing never does. But it became something better, real, grounded, and lasting. And that is why this story matters. Because it reminds us that respect can be more powerful than desire, and listening can be more heroic than action. If you felt the weight of this journey, if you believe stories like this deserve to be told slowly and honestly, make sure you subscribe to the channel and stay with us. More chapters, more moments, and more stories of choice, courage, and quiet strength are waiting. Don't miss what comes next.